Hello there, my little french fries. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make a GIF. GIF, I'm pretty sure it's a GIF. Anyways, this one involves a car driving across a book and a diploma and a graduation cap. And if you want to find out what it all means, be sure to check out Flick's article coming out this upcoming Monday. And if you're watching this in the future, it's probably already out, so you could just go to Flick Editorial and find it under the image that we are creating today. Alrighty guys, that's enough talking, let's get started. So the first thing I'm doing is opening up a blank document. You could do this with whatever background you'd like, and whatever size, it doesn't really matter. For me, I'm doing it in what's called our banner size for Flick Editorial, and these guides are just set up to show me what it would look like on Instagram, so I make sure not to crop anything major out. Now, this is the image that I'm referencing for my sketch. Again, this can be whatever image you want it to be, so go ahead and find one on the internet. Or this could even be from a photo you took. Any reference image will do. Now, to get rid of that pesky background, I'm going to select, then color range, then choosing the background color with the little eyedropper tool. And once that selection has been made, I just delete it. Now, I chose to do this another time just to get rid of even more of the blue, but honestly, this isn't even a necessary step. I just decided to do it just so everything was a bit more clear. Now, here's another thing you could do with Photoshop. You can create a mask and then paint over that mask with either black or white, black being subtracting from that layer and white being adding to that layer. That's why it's currently all white. And this is a non-destructive way to erase that layer. And the reason I don't like to use the eraser tool is because it just completely removes the image and there's no returning it. So this is a great way to maintain the image in your document without seeing it visibly on your screen. And you can create this layer mask by clicking on your desired layer, then going to the bottom right where you see a little image of a square with a circle in the middle and clicking on that. Honestly, I could have done this from the very beginning, but I don't really need this image to show up in the future, so I was a bit lazy, but that's okay. This is just a case of do as I say, not as I do. Another little fun trick on Photoshop is exchanging between the two colors on the bottom left of your screen. The quick way to do this is just to press X, that way you don't have to click that little arrow right over top of it every time. It saves you a little bit of time and it's quite efficient. Okie dokie, now we're gonna start tracing over this image. So what I've gone ahead and done is create a new layer. That way it's not drawing over top of the existing cap and book and diploma. And I've decided to go with the pencil tool because it has a really cool feature that when you press the gear button up at the top, you can choose something called pulled string mode. And this smoothens your line by predicting where your pencil is going to go according to where it currently is. Another useful tip you can use when you're tracing something that is flat, you can press the shift button after you've put down your pencil for the first time. Then you hold down that shift button and put your pencil down on the other edge where you want that line to go, and it will create a perfectly straight line. Now, all you're gonna see me do is finish drawing this shape and make sure that all the lines are touching. That way, when I go to the paint bucket tool to fill in the shape, it doesn't go all over the page because it has no bounds. Essentially, I'm just giving it borders so that in the future, the paint bucket tool will know what to fill in. Now I've created a new layer because I'm drawing an object that I know will overlap the borders of the previous object that I drew. And that might be an issue in the future if I decide that, oh, I want to delete a certain part of this object or I want to mask a certain part of it. That way there is some sort of separation between them so that any action that I take on this object will not affect the other object beneath it. Now I'm going in with that paint bucket tool. I'm making sure I'm selecting the correct layer, which is the cap layer, and I'm filling it in with black. Now, because this image is going to have Harvard colors, I've decided to go with yellow for the background. So now I'm just going to my colors and kind of trying to find the right shade of yellow. And now I'm going to my background layer, selecting it, and filling it in with that paint bucket tool once again. Okay, next I'm gonna go in and start outlining the notebook. I'm using the same technique I used on the cap with the shift key to make sure I'm getting those straight edges. Alrighty, now I'm gonna go in with the color red. I'm gonna choose the one that is to my liking, again in the colors panel. I chose this one because I thought it kind of matched the red of Harvard, but I guess I wouldn't really know because I didn't go to Harvard, which makes me extremely unqualified to make that call. Let's just say it's for aesthetics purposes. Now I am going to change my pencil tool to my brush tool and make sure that I have the soft brush tool selected so that I can add a bit of dimension to this notebook. I'm gonna add in a little spine to make it look a bit more real. And this is what it looks like without that background layer that we're using as a reference. Okay, so note the big glaring hole in the middle of the cap. We're gonna fix that. Let's go to the cap layer and choose our paint bucket tool, choose a slightly lighter color of gray, and fill it in. Now we're gonna add a little bit of highlights. Let's go to a new layer and choose an even brighter color of gray. And just throw that right in the middle of that little circle that we just filled in. Now we're going to choose the eyedropper tool and click on that red that we painted in the notebook with, and maybe go to a little bit of a brighter color of red so we can use that feathered out brush to add some dimension to the center of that notebook. So to make it clear that this is Harvard, I found this little Harvard logo online, and I'm just going to paste it over top of the notebook and kind of adjust it to make sure that it looks like it was actually on there. Now to make it look like it is actually painted on there, I'm going to go to Filter and Filter Gallery. Now there are a lot of cool options here, but I'm kind of looking for something that's a bit more painterly that will go along with the style that we have going already. Alrighty, let's go back in with that mighty shift tool and start outlining the diploma. Now we're going to make a new layer for that bow and outline that as well. Time to fill in that diploma. Okay, so I can see that that bow is not fully closed in, and as you can remember from before, if it's not closed in, that can cause problems with the paint bucket tool, so I'm gonna go ahead and close that up. Okay, so now I want to add some dimension to the diploma, but I've already filled it in, and there are outlines, and those two things are not separated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it with the rectangular selection tool, and then I'm going to move it slightly with the tool that is right above it. And what this will do is make it select just that area on the layer where there is an object. Alright, now so that we select just the inside and not the outlines, we go to Select Color Range and select only the interior color. And now that we have only that portion selected, we can go to our paintbrush tool and paint inside that portion without having to worry about going outside of those lines, because anywhere you paint outside of those lines will not make a difference. Now I'm going to do that exact same process, but just with the bow. And now the same process, but with the tassel. Alright, so now comes the exciting part. We're gonna make the GIF. So I'm gonna put in the car that I want to use, and I'm gonna rotate it so that it's facing the correct direction. Now on a separate layer, I'm going to draw out the path that the car is going to take, just so I know for future reference where I should be placing the other cars that come after it in the motion sequence. Okay, let's get to outlining. Alright, now I'm going in with that paint bucket tool again, and I chose to go with a bluish white because I think it will stand out against the red and the yellow. Now I'm using that same technique as before, going to color range under select and doing the same thing with the windshield just to give it a little bit of a highlight. Now that the car is where I want it to be, I'm going to duplicate the layer so it makes an exact copy of the car onto another layer. And I'm gonna call it car 2. And that's the second position where the car will be, or better known as the second frame of the GIF animation. Now I'm going to repeat this process as many times as I need until the car reaches the X at the end of the path. For me personally, that meant creating 40 layers of the car, but it might differ depending on the image and the motion. Okay, so now we're going to open up our timeline window. This is going to be important because this is how we're going to make our frame animation. So I realized pretty quickly after I had finally finished making the GIF that the car was starting on the wrong side. Given that it needed to go from California to Harvard, which is in Massachusetts, it was going the wrong direction. So now what I'm doing is just flipping everything horizontally except for the Harvard logo, because if I flip that horizontally, it will be a backwards logo, and we don't want that. Now I'm just gonna start moving things around so that they make sense with the new layout. Alrighty guys, now I'm going to make a group from the background layers. Basically anything that does not have motion in it, anything other than the car is going to be in this group. And that's just so I know what I want to be moving later on when I create the sequence. Now in the middle of that timeline, you'll see a drop-down menu, and one of the options will be Create Frame Animation. Go ahead and click on that. Now on the very right of the timeline window, you'll see 3 lines. Go ahead and click on that and click Make Frames from Layers. Now, because we don't want those background layers to be turned into frames, I'm going to duplicate that background group and then delete the first version of the background group. This will remove it from the frames and we'll still be left with all of the background information that we had put in earlier. And on top of this, also, you should now be able to see the background in every single frame along the timeline. Now, if you click the space button, you'll see your car or whatever object it is that you made start moving. I know, super exciting, and that's pretty much how you make a GIF. Alright, now I'm just going to move things around to make sure that the car starts a little bit lower and ends a little bit higher so that it mimics what the United States kind of look like, with California being a little bit lower down than Massachusetts. And also I'm going to add in the outline of each state so that it's clear that the car is going from California to Massachusetts. A useful tip that I learned while making this is that if you want to adjust the placement of an object within all of the frames, make sure that all of the frames are selected in the timeline. Otherwise, you're going to end up having an object moving just for one frame as opposed to throughout the entire sequence. Alrighty guys, are you ready to see the final GIF? Well, here it is. I'm really super proud of the way this turned out. I think it looks really polished, and I think most of all it tells a story. Maybe not the whole story, you'll probably have to go to Flick to read the article, but you know. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed making it. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram, I'll leave the link down below for that. If you'd like to see my fine arts website, I'll leave the link for that below as well. And you know, like, comment, subscribe if you feel like liking, commenting, and subscribing. Alright, my little french fries, that's it for this video. Please stay safe and be kind to one another, and I'll catch you on the next one.